tourism activities and sets forth specific regulations for each. Council referred back to PC on November 21st, 2012. It was postponed December 18th, 2012. Communication 745.32 from Council Member Brenda Ford, dated November 20, 2012, transmitting proposed amendments to Bill 266 Draft 5, postponed December 18, 2012. Note, there is a pending motion by Ms. Ford and duly seconded by Mr. Onishi to recommend passage of Bill 266 Draft 5 on first reading, and a pending motion by Ms. Ford and duly seconded by Mr. Kanuha to amend Bill 266 Draft 5 with the contents of Communication 745.32.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So with that, we will go. The motion is live. Ms. Ford.
Thank you. First of all, let me say we had some interesting testimony today, and I'd like all of us to keep in mind one of the comments, two of the comments that were made. Will this bill mean more crops grown on our island for food and other basic needs? And the second one, is this bill for real farmers, or is it for people who want to cash in and be part of the tourism industry? Okay, those are the two things that we need to keep in front of our brain at all times. Now, regarding Communication 745.32, I wrote this, but I wrote it at the request of Mr. Onishi, who wanted to see all of the concerns by the Sierra Club and various individuals, and so I put all of them together. And at the last time that he commented, he said, well, he didn't like all of these amendments because they were to protect the neighbors and not to inspire more ag tourism. And that's the whole point. The opposition we're hearing from the public is about how the negative impacts of ag tourism are going to be mitigated. And we don't have much mitigation in here, and that's what this bill, or this amendment 745.32 is about. Now, we can go through each one of these individually and talk about them. If you just have questions about some of them, we can talk about that. But as you will see, and you're hearing from the testimony, this is the second time that you've heard from these people talking about an assortment of things. Now, one thing, I keep answering this question. Unfortunately, most people leave before we get to this, so they never hear my answer, is why do we have a weekly visitor count instead of a daily visitor count? For the new members, at the last council, I brought forward an amendment for a daily count. And it was trashed by several members of that council, saying, you can't control how many people are going to show up on your property on any given day. So therefore, we shouldn't do it. We should do it by the week. So my amendment went down the drain, and so we still have this weekly number. It's not because we haven't addressed it. We did. I lost. Okay? We are in a new term. If we want to bring this back up again and make this a daily number, then we need to really think about that, because I would support it personally. But it's not in this amendment because this amendment was written during the last council, and I was prohibited from reintroducing that a second time. So I'm more than willing to answer any questions you have about this, but these are all the suggestions that came from the community, the things they're worried about. For instance, on page 4, they're worried about having loud musical events, dances. None of these things have anything to do with ag tourism, but they could take place. Mechanical amusement rides, dirt bikes, other kinds of things. It just goes on and on and on. And I'm not saying don't pass this, because frankly, I'd love to see this passed. But these are the concerns of people who are honestly engaged in agriculture in an agricultural area and will be negatively impacted by ag tourism, and nobody's addressing these concerns except this bill. So whatever anybody wants to talk about or ask, I'm willing to answer questions. So I'll yield at this point.
Mr. Yoshimoto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lita Todd?
Yes.
Hi, I wanted to ask you for some comments from you about, I guess, the current version of Draft 6 and how far we've come from the original bill. Because I don't know if you can give us percentage, Bobby, but just give us an idea as far as how far we've come, or how far have we strayed from the original bill?
Well, I think you got to backtrack and understand that there's an existing provision in the county code that allows for agricultural tourism and up to 30,000 visitors a year. So the concerns expressed to me by farmers had to do primarily with having to do plan approval and get a drainage study done if they weren't building anything new. And that's how we started off trying to tweak this. And while I was looking at it, I thought I would just basically kind of tweak it for the smaller operations and come up with kind of differentiating between those that had 15,000 or less and those that had up to 30,000. And the goal was also to try and just do a plan approval, which then triggers a drainage study when you do new construction. Because if you're not adding new roof, if you're not adding new impervious surface, it didn't make sense to hire an engineer and pay $6,000 for a drainage study. We've gone a lot farther than what the original bill was. Draft 6 goes in areas that I hadn't envisioned and I think is kind of overkill. But there were also two other technical issues when I was asked to go back and review this. On page 3 of draft 5, subsection E, where it deletes the words trailer park on plan approvals. Because the deletion of the words trailer park, page 3 of draft 5. Subsection E, you're proposing to delete the words. It's in brackets and blocked through trailer park or under subsection E. Because the trailer park does not specifically relate to agricultural tourism, I think it's a technical flaw in that you're trying to amend a provision of the code that may be wrong, but it can't be done under the title of the bill, because the title of the bill is agricultural tourism. And so since trailer parks don't have anything to do with agricultural tourism, I don't think you can use this bill to delete it from the county code. Similarly, on page 8, I believe, under item number 9, where you're have stuff about a farm market or a roadside stand, and you're proposing to provide some restrictions on that in terms of sufficient safe off-street parking for vehicles. Since farm markets or vegetable stands, roadside stands, are a separate permitted use under both state law as well as our county code, you can't use this bill to add additional restrictions to a roadside stand or a farm market, because it's not ag tourism. I don't have a problem with the idea of what those amendments try to do. I'm just saying that because the title of the bill is ag tourism, that there's a couple of items that went too far, and actually it started deviating after draft 2.
Okay, so
it's not that I object to those changes, it's just that I don't think you can do it technically within this bill.
Okay, so, wouldn't
Mr. Yoshimoto?
Yeah.
I have something I might want to add that might change the direction of this conversation. I have submitted a bill in relation to agricultural tourism. Basically looks the same as draft 2. I feel coming into this council session, have seen it a way that it's gone, and we've come in at basically draft 5. It's been amended far beyond its original, the way it originally looked. I think it's challenging for us as a new council to come in and be working with this. And how this originally came out is I wanted to put something back in that was from a previous draft, but LRB said I can't do that because you can't go backwards. And so I said, how can we do this And so this is what made the most sense. So we can begin this conversation as a new council, starting at draft 2, which does make sense. Not to say that it won't be amended, not to say we can't go through amendments, but it also gives a chance for draft 2 or the new bill that looks like draft 2 to go through the Windward Planning Commission, the Leeward Planning Commission, and us as a body would actually get a fresh start on it and potentially amend it forward. But I don't think it would look quite like this myself. So that's what I would like to do. I would like to send this forward with a negative recommendation to council for a council meeting, and then this would die, and then the new draft, the new bill would come forth, and we could start on that, and it would be fresh and clean, and we could actually hopefully make some good amendments to it. Because we've heard the public. I know there needs to be some tweaks to it, but we also need to make sure that it will potentially help the farmers. And if we go this far, I don't think it'll help the farmers in the same way. So that's what I'd like to see done. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Yoshimoto?
Given that, I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Ms. Ford?
Well, we've been working on this for I don't know how many years, and we've listened to the public tell us what they want and what they don't want, and we're about to toss it. I mean, assuming, no offense to Mr. Kern, but we're about to toss all that time and everything the public wants out the window and go back and do something that is going to be a detriment to the communities. Again, at the beginning of this session, I said I suggested that we keep in mind two things. Is this for real farmers, or is this somebody who wants to be part of tourism? Or is this going to give us more crops grown on this island for food and other basic needs? And going back to draft 2, to me, violates both of those statements or thoughts that we should be keeping in mind. I also have a problem with the bill saying, the header saying ag tourism, and we're not allowed to touch anything in ag tourism if it has to do with parking or it has to do with something else. I find that, what's the word I want to use? I'm trying to be calm here. Or trailer parks, as a matter of fact.
Unduly
if it's in the ag tourism thing, if it's in ag, it seems to me that it should be taken care of in one bill. But that's just my opinion. But I'm certainly not willing to go back to draft 2 and make all of these hundreds of people who've been testifying for way over a year come back and start over saying, where's the 32 things that Brenda put in this amendment, and you guys are ignoring them again. I think that it is doing a terrible disservice to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll comment on Ms. Wille.
I sort of was thinking of a different tactic. I would like to proceed and vote in favor of this, and if there's some way to have like a sunset bill, or some way that we then evaluate what's gone on and to just plan to relook at how does it work, instead of if things go back, we're always speculating. Is 15,000 the right number? Is 8 to 6, or should it be 10 to 4? And maybe just try. I mean, it does have a lot of energy into it. I have a lot of concerns, and I think Brenda was really good in terms of pinpointing some really real questions. But I also feel we are part of a continuing process, and I'm really not in favor of sending it back to the commissions. And I don't have a complete everything down in the graphs. I have no idea what daily counts, weekly counts. But I would like to let's just try it. But be in mind that we're going to re-examine this, and we're going to be accountable at how things work. So I have similar concerns, but I'm trying to look at it, and here's a different way of maybe going about addressing it. Let's give it a go and realize we don't know every answer, and we will relook at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wille. Ms. Ford.
I'd like to comment on daily counts. 15,000 people a year means on a daily basis, 41 different people showing up. They probably would show up in 2s or maybe 3s or maybe in a 15-passenger van. But just imagine living next door to somebody with 41 different vehicles, or even half that amount, 20 vehicles a day, coming into your property, to the next door property. The noise, the dust, the disruption to a farming community. Those of us who live in an ag zone and farm, like me, there's a reason we live there. We don't want to be in an urban area. We paid money to be out in an ag area. And some of us even raise pigs, and some of us raise other things. But we don't want to be in an area with buses and 41 people a day coming into our next door neighbor's property. Look at the complaints that we get when the drug houses are operating and they get people coming in at that rate every single day. The neighbors all go crazy. And it's not just the drugs, it's the constant vehicular traffic. When you get to 30,000, that's 82 people a day. Now, when I made the last amendment, I think I dropped it to something like 30 per day or something like that. I forget what it was. And honest to God, people were just outraged that we would dare restrict that on a daily basis. Imagine 30 different vehicles a day coming into your next door neighbor's property. Not all of us are on 20-acre parcels. I'm on 2 acres. If my next door neighbor has 40 vehicles coming in a day, I mean, that's a nightmare. I can't get in and out, and my workers can't get in and out of my subdivision. I can't operate a farm with that much traffic, urban traffic, going in and out of my little private road or my little county road or whatever it is. A county road's the best example. So, you know, the people who are actively farming have justifiable reasons for being very concerned about this. I am for ag tourism, but this, you know, if you don't make all of these amendments, or at least a great portion of them, you have just shut down ag for all the neighbors immediately around that property. You've shut it down.
Ms. Eoff.
Just question to Ms. Ford, but in your amendment, it's still allowing over 40 or 50 people a day if you go 350 a week for minor.
Is that a question, I hope? May I answer the question?
Yes, please do.
The only reason it's at that number is because I failed, my last amendment to lower those numbers failed, so I had to leave it the way it was. I don't like those numbers. They're way, way too high.
But you're asking us to support this.
I'll be happy to make an amendment to drop the number per day and make it per day and not just per week. I'll be happy to do that. Tell me that's what you want me to do, I'll do it.
Mr. Yoshimoto?
So, Ms. Ford, you know, in listening to what Mr. Kern said about not being able to go backwards, isn't your amendment going to be going backwards? Did you consult with?
We are a new. May I answer this question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No.
First of all, we're a new council. We can do anything we want because we'll be doing it for the first time. We could even go backwards if we have a vote, at least 6 votes to say we're going to go backwards. We can do that. We can bring up any old amendment we want if we have the sufficient votes to do so. I'm not saying that this is a perfect amendment. It is not. I mean, there are changes I would make, but I did this at Mr. Onishi's request. And I still think there should be changes. I think it should be a daily number. I think it should be far, far less than this. If we can agree on what we think that number would be, I'd be happy to amend this and bring it back as point something else. You know, I'll be happy to do that. I just don't want to have our agricultural industry destroyed by urbanizing it with this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Ms. Poindexter?
I just need some clarification on what you were saying about if we go back to draft 2.
Technically a new bill, but
A
similar
new bill,
to draft 2.
right, a new bill. But then couldn't we bring some of the things that the people had talked about all those years, that it's not be wasted, but we kind of bring them back in and start massaging it? I mean, that's what I'm hearing that maybe you want to do, which still addresses all of the things that you've collected over the years from testimony and kind of redid that that draft 5, right? We were in draft 5. Are we in 5?
Yeah, we were in 5.
We're in
Answer
5.
that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Briefly.
The answer is yes. If we you know, we can start over. But remember, it's going to. I don't think it should go back to the commission. That's a waste of time. If you want to go back to draft 2, i.e., a new bill that would be paralleling this or whatever, that would be okay. But if you start with a new bill, it has to go to the commission. See, that's the problem. You're sitting back. We are responsible. And all these people who have testified,
You can,
I don't want to sit here for another 2 years on this one.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. I would say, though, I mean, part of we all talk about home rule, and part of our home rule is having our planning commission process to go through. And if we're going to bring in something new, this bill is so far from where it originally started from, and I just don't like the fact that we have adopted it at draft 5, basically, and now we're trying to make adjustments, and it's so hard to make adjustments based on the format that we have to work on, that the only way I feel that we can actually come up with something that's really going to make sense, that's going to promote healthy agricultural tourism, making sure there is proper infrastructure in place, making sure that there is the necessarily daily, weekly counts, and address the concerns of the community. I feel like this has gone so far that us as a body, as a council body, that this is going to have our name on. We should have a chance to do this. If you guys wanted to do this before, Ms. Ford, you guys should have closed this out in your press session.
Can I?
Yes, Ms. Poindexter.
So I'm trying to understand this. So what you're saying is that you want it to go to the proper process, that it's gone so far that it needs to go back to the commission and follow that process?
The reason I think it would have to go back to the commissions is because it's a new bill. And so if it's a new bill, it has to go through that process and come back to us, and they're going to give a favorable or unfavorable recommendation. But we're starting with a cleaner canvas. I feel that we're working on a painting that's been there's so many strokes on it that it's hard to actually see the entire picture the way that I feel we should see it. And so by going to the new bill, we actually start with a cleaner canvas. Not to say that some of these amendments wouldn't go in there. The concerns of the public do need to be addressed, but I feel that if we're going to do something, we need to make sure that the neighbors are being taken care of, but we're actually still promoting that, the add value of the agricultural tourism to folks that want to take advantage of that. I just feel like right now it's so different than where it started, and we don't get that say in it. If you want to change something back, you cannot. That's the problem. Ms. Ford?
We can change anything back if we get 6 votes.
Sitting down with LRB.
I'll forget them. They weren't elected. Okay, I'd like to make another comment. And this is a frustration. All of these issues the public has raised, why weren't those discussed in the Planning Commission? And if they were, why were they ignored? You were on the Planning Commission. Why wasn't this cleaned up back then? We got this bill with practically nothing in it, and no protections for the neighbors, and we've been struggling with it ever since. I have no hope that if you put in a new bill and send it back to the commission, they're going to have anything in it that's going to protect the neighbors. They didn't do it the first time. Why would they do it now?
Ms. Wille?
Okay. When we say do a new bill, we could make changes in this bill that go back towards whatever draft, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. I just have trouble. I'll go along with it if that's really where the majority is, but I would like to not drop it and then bring it up in another 6 months. I'd also like to hear what Ms. Light had taught us to say, but I would rather just plain stick with this and address the changes and look at them and try to. We're now been hearing all this input and not give it to somebody else to do. And I think I agree with Brenda. I don't care what they say. As long as we don't do it as a new bill, if we keep it in this bill, I think we're okay.
And there's a chance of that to get challenged, and a farmer could come along and challenge that, and then it wouldn't hold up potentially. But I know that by doing it the way that I would like to do it, it won't be able to be challenged, and it will be solid, and it will be good legislation. That would be the goal of it, and we would be able to work on it as a council body that we are, not a previous council body, to actually get some good law bills.
I just want to.
Hey, BJ. BJ.
I just want to finish my sentence just a second. I'm just not doing. I'm not trying to do something different than what you want, but as long as we keep it in this bill and aren't giving it a new title and a new name, as far as I'm concerned, we're okay. And I also agree with Ms. Ford, and not Ms. Todd, that I think all of these accessory issues and parking and all of that does not go beyond the whole concept of ag tourism. But, you know, unless there's some case law that tells me I'm wrong, anyway, that's my opinion.
Madam Director, could you give us your sense?
Well, the problem is that you have a charter provision that says that when you have a bill and you have a title, that the amendments within the bill have to adhere to the title. And when you address things like the farm markets, which are not ag tourism, they're a separate permitted use, then it doesn't fall under the title here. It's not that that's not necessarily a good amendment to the county code. I'm just saying that under the title of this bill, you can't go and regulate other types of agricultural uses unless they're specifically related to agricultural tourism. And the farm markets are a separate permitted use under state law. That's all that I'm saying. It's a technical issue, and it is because of language in the county charter. It's been very frustrating. It was frustrating when I was on the council because it meant that we couldn't go and do stuff that we thought needed to be done. You have to do a separate bill. But I almost hate to say this because this is just going to make everything murkier. There is a committee working with the State Department of Agriculture on a major rewrite to the state law on ag tourism, which may make some of the stuff in this bill either obsolete or would require a major rewrite if that bill goes through the state legislature. I've seen it. They're basically increasing some of the requirements on the income levels to qualify. They're addressing overnight accommodations. And so regardless of whether this bill passes in draft 5, whether it passes in draft 6, whether it goes back to draft 2 and goes back to the Planning Commission, there may be significant changes to state law which would then require additional changes to our ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Director. Any other discussion? No?
Question.
Yes, Ms. Eoff.
If a new bill were to be introduced and be referred to the planning commissions, what would be the turnaround time till we would get it back into our possession?
Can I add to that question?
Yeah, I was asking the planning director.
Yes.
If she knows.
Given our current agendas, it would probably not be on the agendas till at least March, and that's because of our timetable. We have a much longer timetable in terms of getting our public notice out for the commissions, and they only meet once a month, and the bill has to go to both Windward and Leeward to progress. So I would think that it would be March at the absolute earliest that it would get on the commission's agendas, and because both would have to hear it, it would not get back to you folks until April or May.
Thank you. Mr. Ilagan?
After hearing the discussion, I will support passing a negative recommendation on this bill and also going with the draft 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Question for whoever knows this answer. Is there any way that we can waive the planning commissions? No. Cannot, right? Okay. No, but that's... yeah. Okay. Ms. Ford.
Thank you. I'm really reluctant to say what I'm about to say. I have to agree with what Bobby Jean said about the title has to match what's in the bill. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go through the Planning Commission. I think where it's a cop-out for us to do that. It's our job to do this and get this fixed correctly. However, with that said, if there is going to be a new bill, don't make the title just ag tourism. Make it wide enough so that we can change all these other things in that section of ag along with it. If you make it too tight, you obviously can see all the problems we've got. It shouldn't just say ag tourism if we got to deal with the parking issues in there and all these other things. So it's got to be broad enough to take care of that. But I am not going to support going with a new bill.
Very good. I would sit down with the director and see what we would have to get into the title and see if I can change that title to allow some of these areas to be amended if we see fit. I don't have a problem with that. I feel that we're not supposed to. Our Robert's rules say we're not supposed to go back in this way. Doing that, we'd be continuing going back. It's not how we're supposed to operate. It's not our rules. We can't suspend all of our rules. So the only way, based on all the research that. Based on everybody that I've talked to, this is the best, cleanest, and most guaranteed way to actually come up with good, sound legislation and make changes that we, as a body, can make changes to. Mr. Kanuha.
I appreciate all the hard work and dedication that everybody has been putting into this bill through the past years. It's extremely difficult to come into right now as a freshman council person seeing this bill, and it's so complex and so watered down that it's really difficult. I don't know how I feel voting on something where I couldn't have a little bit more. I know I have a lot of say right now on what we could do, but I really don't know how I'm going to vote on this. So I'm kind of uncertain. But I just wanted to say that it's really difficult for myself to put a stamp on it right now in time.
Ms. Wille?
Well, I share some of those same concerns, but again, I'd like to hear what rule it is that says if we keep this bill, we can't change back to some other provision. And that's A. And B, I think that if there are particular issues that are concerned where we're going beyond that title, we can pull those and do that in something separate. So I would just really like to keep moving forward and not taking away from what Drew says. I have these same reservations, but still I would like us to hold on to this and address it with this title, doing what we can and work it through, even if we're postponing it longer, and you make the changes. I think it's just if we introduce a new bill.
I'd
like to hear a rule, though. Tell me a rule that says we can't do that.
Okay, Mr. Hendricks, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Ford?
I need to correct one thing you said. We can suspend the rules for anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you please identify yourself?
John Hendricks, Legislative Specialist, Legislative Research Branch. This isn't a rule in your council rules. It's just a general rule in Robert's rules relating to parliamentary procedure, talking about improper amendments. And basically the rule reads that an amendment is improper if it takes something back to a previous form that is either identical to or exactly contrary to that previous form. So essentially what that is saying is that as you amend something, there's a progression to that amendment, and you cannot make amendments that would take something back to an identical previous form. Mr. Kern wanted to take the bill essentially back to draft 2, but in doing so, you'd be going back several steps to previous forms. You couldn't even necessarily go from draft 5 to 4, let alone 5 to 2. Even an individual amendment within the bill that would take something back to a previous form technically would be an improper amendment. Now, what that means to the viability of the bill as an ordinance is not, would ultimately be decided by somebody else. But that is fairly clear to me in Robert's rules that an amendment to take something back to identical to a previous form is not allowed by Robert's rules as parliamentary procedure.
Right. It's the identicalness.
Or contrary. It gets very cumbersome trying to adjust this bill at the format that it's in.
Suspend the rules.
You can't.
That's not our rule, though.
It's just general parliamentary procedure that applies to most boards and commissions that adopt.
Can I ask him, can we suspend that?
You can ask.
You can suspend your own rules, but you can't suspend parliamentary procedure. It's not in our council rules written down. It's a form of parliamentary procedure. Right. If you suspend your own, what our rules basically say is that wherever our rules are silent, Roberts is what we follow. Now, if you wanted to write a rule in your rules that says we could do that, maybe you could, but still, you'd be cutting against the grain of established parliamentary procedure that's been in operation for centuries.
So
Ms. Poindexter?
now I'm understanding why you say take it back there, make it something new, and then then we can now make those changes, because then we're not moving back after it's new. So I understand now where you're coming from. But my concern is like what Brenda had stated, all of the testimony that has come for all those years, that we need to honor that.
Thank you, Ms. Poindexter. And I, by no means, what I'm proposing to do here, thank you, Mr. Hendricks, takes away from that testimony and takes away from those people. What we do have is we'll have 5.5 drafts that have come through that we can pull off of and see that. We have submitted written testimony, and we can actually adjust and amend. I'm not saying that the newly proposed bill, which is similar to draft 2, would come in and just get voted and passed done. I'm saying we could start some amendments that make sense at that point in time. We have all this information to go off of. I just don't like it the way that it is right now. Any other discussion? Okay, so we need to vote then. Oh, were you going to say something? Yeah. Ms. Eoff?
So, in other words, if you introduce a new bill that sort of mimics what the draft 2 looked like, we can't do anything to it besides send it to the Planning Commission when we first get a hold of it, correct?
As far as I know, that is correct.
We introduce it to our council, then we directly send it to the commission. So at that time, they're going to be in possession of it till whatever she said, March. And then when we get it back, Ms. Ford could technically introduce the same amendments that she's solidified to this point, and then we would consider that as an amendment to the bill that you submit.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, I was just informed that you can make an amendment before you send it back to the Planning Commission.
Oh, so we could take your clean bill and put in some amendments before we send it to the Planning Commission?
Yep. That's what the clerk says, yes.
Would that be something to consider, Ms. Ford? Because your amendments you could synthesize them into a package that incorporates all of the concerns that you've been gathering, and then amend his bill.
The quick answer is yes. It can always be done. Please remember that this is not necessarily everything that I agree to. There's things in here I don't like.
Well, I'm saying you can change. We can withdraw
the answer is yes,
that,
if you're starting
and
over,
you start clean too.
Yes, you can make all the public come in and testify for hours and hours and hours again, like we have. But you can do it. The answer is yes. You can always do it.
Or we can explain what we're doing, and maybe they would be comfortable because your amendments
Please
would
remember,
would
it's still
address
the same planning commission that didn't do any of this stuff before.
No, we're going to do it. Or you have the opportunity to.
Yeah, we would have the option to make amendments, then send it to them, and they could or they could not make amendments.
The reason I'm struggling is because I'm looking at the draft. I really tried hard last night, especially to look at earlier drafts and then compare it to what this most current draft and the amended version that Ms. Ford has submitted, to see where all the changes are, so I could understand what we're trying to do to the bill. And I had a really hard time. I saw a lot of the same stuff. Then I couldn't really figure out what was new and what was underlined from a previous. I had a heck of a time trying to decide what it was we were trying to accomplish. Besides the new amendments, I did understand that. But I lost the thread of what the intent of the earlier versions were. So, to me, if especially now that the clerk has explained that we could amend it before giving it to the Planning Commission, well, I don't know. I'm just thinking maybe that is a easier way to understand what the bill does to the code and what we do by amending with what Ms. Ford has. Was even better than the amendment she has now, because she can start clean too. So that's just what I'm thinking. Could be a good solution.
That's the same conclusion I came to. Thank you, Ms. Eoff. Any other discussion? So now we're going to vote on the motion. Clerk, will you clarify what exactly we're voting on?
We're voting on the pending motion to amend Bill 266 Draft 5 with the contents of Communication 745.32.
We're on 745.32.
32.
my amendment.
Your
amendment. Okay.
Roll call.
Roll call. Ms. Ford?
Okay, hold on, guys. 745.32 is what Mr. Onishi asked me to do. I did the work. I don't like this amendment because it's got stuff in here I don't like and other stuff that maybe I do like. The only reason I put this together at Mr. Onishi's request is so all of you could see what the public is complaining about. We don't have to pass this at all, although there's a lot of good stuff in here. We could bifurcate it and go down line by line and choose what we like about it. If Mr. Kern's going to start from draft 2, once we see draft 2, then I can try to clean it up again. I mean, I don't like where this is going at all, so I'm not going to say what I'm going to do. I don't like this.
I know I've spoken more than my share, but I have another question.
Ms. Eoff, hold on one second. Councilmember Onishi first.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I need to make a comment. Just listening to the past testimony from the public and with the past council, agreements was done between Ms. Ford and myself, but someone had to do the amendments. So I had looked at her and kind of looking, saying, "Okay, you do it, but I'll support you." But she did it. But the thing is, she had agreed upon what the public had said, which I also agreed that there needed to be changes, and that's why the amendment was done. But for myself, if you folks remember at the meeting in Kona, was that because of how many drafts we went through and how much it's changed, to me, what the heading was and what everything was being added on was changing this whole bill and the heading. So that's why I had mentioned to Ms. Todd about it going back to the commission because of all the changes that we were doing. But then she said we don't have to do it and we could continue on. But then to me, yes, I mean, I got confused before when I was with the previous, and so I can understand you guys with draft 5 now with all these changes. So to me, it would be best because the public already voiced their concerns, and that's what we all know. Okay, so that's where we gotta fix it. But with this right now, I think it's too confusing already. So we need to kind of start all over because we know that because the same people going to come out and testify. But the main thing is we let them know that we heard their concerns and we're doing the changes in this new draft. And that's what I'm going to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Eoff?
Okay, my next question is also procedural. Can this bill be withdrawn or the amendments be withdrawn rather than we have to kill it? Somebody can withdraw it, or I don't know. I think I would feel comfortable with that since I'm the first to vote. I mean, I hate to I hate to have to say no to the bill and to the amendment, but I was just wondering if it can be withdrawn with the agreement that we're going to reintroduce a simpler version, which we plan to amend to include most of this concerns that have been voiced.
Madam Clerk?
Is your question, can we withdraw the motion to amend, or can we withdraw this?
Oh, my question was, can we withdraw this entire bill?
No.
We got to vote on it. And you can always Kanuha.
Oh, yeah. But
or not.
Okay. But first we have to vote on the amendment.
Okay.
Yes.
I now need to ask a procedural question.
Yes, Ms. Ford.
Okay, the quick answer to can Brenda withdraw this amendment? Yeah, the answer is yes. Okay. The bill issue, that's beyond, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. However, the bill itself has got so many flaws and no protection for neighbors, I will not support the bill if it's not amended in some way, drastically amended to protect the neighbors. So, I can withdraw the amendment, the bill can be voted down. When it goes up to council again, it can be voted down. We can start over again. Frankly, I want to see what Mr. Kern is going to produce before this bill gets killed. I would soon postpone this bill and its amendments to the call of the chair, and let's see what Mr. Kern is going to do and how much he's going to address in this issue. You can have two bills on the same issue coming through. We've done it before. I'm very untrusting. I'm very untrusting when it comes to protection of farmers. I'm very untrusting about what this council and certainly the Planning Commission is going to do. So, I'm not interested in killing anything.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Yeah, the intention of this is not what Zendo Kern's going to do, but it's the matter of what this council is going to do in this term and something that we can understand and that we create. That's my point. This is not about what I'm doing to it. This is about actually trying to put forth good legislation that we understand. I cannot vote on something or go through something that is hard to comprehend, hard to understand, that doesn't make sense. If we want to support the ag tourism part of it, let's do that, but let's do it in a way that we also protect our neighbors. It doesn't have to be this complex. I think we can do something that's simple, that we are protecting our neighbors, and that we are supporting and encouraging agricultural tourism in the right ways, in the right locations. That's the point. I just wish us as a council could do that and not be adopting this in this form that it's in. But we should vote really soon, or we're going to be here a long time.
We can move to postpone?
Yeah.
Can we move to postpone?
No, let's, I won't.
So
Vote on the amendment or withdraw, and then we can either entertain a motion to postpone, we can entertain a motion to send it forward with an unfavorable recommendation to council, or we could move to send a favorable recommendation to council. But
we don't have Corporation Counsel here right now. So my question to Corporation Counsel is going to be, if we vote down this amendment that I have put together, and we vote down the bill, we're now in this term. So now we're going to bring back another bill that's going to be pretty much the same as we had before. Yes, there will be some words here and sentences there, so it will be slightly different. But the impact of the bill is going to be somewhat the same. And so if we kill this, are we going to kill any opportunity to do ag tourism in this term? And I don't know the answer to that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Yoshimoto.
That answer is pretty clear to me. Because it's a new term, we get a fresh bite at the apple. I mean, that's my interpretation.
You've got this apple on your plate right now.
then we can bring those.
Point of order.
Yes, Mr. Onishi.
See, but when you withdraw, then we withdraw the draft 5, right?
No.
Or this will be draft 6.
This will be draft 6. Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to be voting down is draft 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not like what the original we're going to be coming up with anyway. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Ms. Ford, are you going to withdraw the amendment, or are you going to hold with it?
I'm going to hold with it. I want to if you're going to be writing this new thing, I want to see what it looks like before this one goes down the tubes. You can postpone this for 2 years if you want.
And I will say again, this isn't about me writing it. This is about us writing it.
I got the assignment from Onishi. If you say you're going to write something, go ahead and write it.
So let's
see what it looks like.
Make a motion. You go ahead.
Let's vote on the motion that's on the floor.
Can I make a motion to postpone? Does that trump the other?
With the pending motion open, we can do that?
Yep.
Okay.
Motion to postpone at the call of the chair.
So there's a motion
to the call of the chair.
Okay, there's a motion to postpone with to the call of the chair from Ms. Wille, and it's been seconded by Ms. Ford. Any discussion on that? Ms. Eoff?
I support the postponement.
Yeah, I support because I need more information.
You got to go on mic so the public.
Okay, I think I'm leaning towards the postponement because it feels like I just need more information. I need to gather before I make a decision because I'm real uncertain right now. I understand what you're saying, and I want to vote this down because I want to do what yet I understand what Ms. Ford is saying. So I'm not in a good place right now to make a decision on that. So I'm leaning towards the postponement so that I can go and gather some information for myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Not sure who had their light on over there first.
Go ahead.
Ms. Mr. Ilagan?
Sounds like we want to do a comparison. And since we're not doing a withdrawal, I am going to support the postponement, and let's see what comes up.
There's either revival.
She's dancing the hula. Are you doing some type of hula moves?
She's talking to somebody else over there. Mr. Yoshimoto?
No. Did we want to hear from Ms. Lee to talk? Yeah. Oh, okay.
I don't think so. Unless somebody else.
Well, anyway, this is my thought. Okay. On the postponement, I think the key question to me is if you support the postponement, you recognize that we cannot go backwards in time. So if you had a chance to look at draft 2, and that's something that you like, or previous versions of this current bill, we can't go back there. I think that's been accepted. So if you can accept that limitation, then we can go postpone and compare it. But it seems like it would be non-productive to postpone something when we don't even like what it can do now, because we are restricted in how we can amend it. Versus if we have a fresh bill, fresh start, recognizing that there are a lot of people who testified, and that's fine, right? Because I think, well, at least 3 of us and others have heard the testimony or read the testimony, so they don't necessarily have to. Well, they have the right to come back and testify again, but we have that working knowledge. So then Ms. Ford can bring back amendments because she already pretty much has a firm grasp on what changes she wants. We get a chance to hear. It's basically an open forum, open plate as far as what kind of changes we can make because it is a new bill in a new term. I just think if you postpone it, recognizing that you cannot make the changes that go backwards, then I don't see the point in postponing. I mean, it's fine to compare if that's what you want to do, but then you can't go backwards. I mean, that's just Robert's rules. That makes sense because otherwise, if we could go backwards in time, we could do that in perpetuity with all legislation, and then we would be just like chasing our own tail at that point. And that's why Robert's rules say once you have an amendment, you cannot go back to a previous version, which makes complete sense, right? Otherwise, we would be stuck in a loop. So anyway, that's just food for thought. I'm not saying which one is better or not. Just you have to recognize if you postpone, this is draft 5 or 6 or whatever it is, you can't go back to draft 2 in that bill.
Thank you, Mr. Yoshimoto. Furthermore, you can't go back to sections of draft 2 that were liked. You can't go back to sections of draft 3 that you liked. You got this, move forward. You like anything in those past bills? No. Past drafts? No. So
where I'm leaning is like start with what you said so we can move forward and even put some of the things that that you're saying you're not happy with there, you have the opportunity to make it what you would want it to be, or we could work on that as one body.
Yeah, it's really not a me thing. It's a we thing. It's our council body.
With making sure that we do honor the voices of the people.
Yes.
Can I ask Jay a question?
Yes, Ms. Wille?
Jay, you feel really secure in terms of not having corporation counsel that we kill this, we vote this down, that we can, in this term, do a closely, basically the same topic? You do?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And actually, Ms. Wille, even no matter which way we voted, this still moves up to council, so there'll be another opportunity. Okay. So Mr. Kern can introduce his bill for committees for the next term. We'll have time to look at his bill, and then the next day will be council, and then you'll actually see his draft versus this current draft, which is going to be before the council. Because no matter what happens, this moves up. So you can still have the comparison without the postponement. I mean, you can do the postponement. My only point is that you just can't go backwards. So,
right. Okay.
I mean,
thank you.
The postponement is not a deal breaker or anything.
Yeah, I'm not entirely opposed to postponing it. It's just it's just punting. We're good at punting. We punt solid waste issues down the road. We do all this. Let's get to work and do good legislation. That's my point.
So I just asked. I said I talk on the mic. So I looked at Margaret and said, "Are you withdrawing your postponement?" I don't know. Go ahead.
And again, I'm not saying don't postpone. I'm just saying that if you do that, I mean that's our restriction, and that's fine. Because the other, I don't mean to play two sides on this, but if we postpone it, it'll still be in committee. It'll be in the same committee. You can look at it that way. But either way, we got to do something, with it.
I'm not withdrawing my motion to
Let's
postpone.
vote, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Kanuha, let's vote on the postponement. All right. Then you call for the question. Ms. Ward?
Just a comment on this potential bill that may or may not appear out of the ozone. You know, you've referred to draft 2, going back to draft 2. Draft 2 is obviously very substandard, or we wouldn't be up on draft 5 plus an amendment. So copying draft 2, in my opinion, is a mistake. But I'm on the postponement, so I'm still supporting a postponement.
Ms. Poindexter?
But on the, if you go back to draft 2, you start a new bill, you can change the title also?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we would have the
So
option to do that.
with
yes.
that, that's another benefit.
Yep.
Is because then you don't restrict yourself in that. So I
Correct.
see that as a benefit, so I'm leaning more in that direction right now.
Correct. And my point is that we as a council have not got to vote on draft 2, 3, 4, or much less 5, really. That's the problem. Mr. Yoshimoto?
One final thought. And, you know, for whatever it's worth, council members, the previous council had similar difficulties. That's why, you know, well, that's why we're at draft 5, Ms. Ford, right? So, yeah, I mean, there is no magic bill. Otherwise, we would have decided this already. And that's why, you know, there's no perfect. Mrs. Poindexter.
But what restricted it, part of it, what was a problem is the title, correct? Because the body had to match the title.
Right.
Correct? That was part
I
of
think
the
we're in agreement
reason
on
that
that,
you guys struggled with it, because of the title.
One of the problems.
Now we have the opportunity to change that title.
Mr. Onishi?
You know, I don't think was. I want to vote. I really want to vote on this. But listening to discussion, but it's like I don't think it was the title. It's just that listening to the testimony from the public, that every time we would come up with one draft, then they would still have other concerns. So then the council members couldn't decide to vote. So then that's why we would postpone it and make another amendments and so forth. That's why it almost came to draft 6, is because of every time we brought it up had concerns. But that's why if we do just vote all this or withdraw and vote the other one down and come up with a new one with all the changes in that draft, you know, that draft 2 that we're talking about, then we can start kind of like mentioning like from fresh, like, because we're going to get all this information from 6, going to come all the way down to 2 again. And then from there, the public can look at it and then they can make comments. And if we need to make changes, then we'll go to draft 3 after that. Okay, but that's what everything is coming down to. But I want to vote. I'm calling for the question.
Oh, question got called.
You got to vote for that.
Gotta go second.
Second.
You still have to vote on it.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Yeah.
Okay, seeing one.
I've lost my voice talking, guys.
Question.
So,
No postpone?
would you clarify what the motion is?
On the motion to postpone to the call of the chair, Ms. Eoff,
Aye.
Ms. Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Ilagan,
No.
Mr. Kanuha,
No.
Mr. Onishi,
No.
Ms. Poindexter,
No.
Ms. Wille,
Aye.
Mr. Yoshimoto,
No.
Mr. Kern. I
No.
mean, Chair Kern. Sorry.
Thanks. It's fine. No.
Chair Kern, you have 3 ayes. Sorry.
Okay, now we still have the pending motion of the amendment.
On the pending motion to amend Bill 266, Draft 5, with the contents of Communication 745.32. Ms. Eoff?
No.
Ms. Ford?
I can't hear what.
Oh, sorry. What am I voting on?
You're voting
On
on
the
your
amendment.
amendment.
Aye.
Mr. Ilagan?
No.
Mr. Kanuha?
Kanuha, no.
Mr. Onishi? No. Ms. Poindexter?
No.
Ms. Wille?
Honolulu.
Mr. Yoshimoto?
No.
Chair Kern?
No.
Ms. Wille?
No.
Chair Kern, you have 1 aye.
Thank you. Back to the main motion, which is passage of Bill 266, Draft 5, right?
Yes.
So this what we're voting on now is whether to send to council favorable or unfavorable, right? So no means unfavorable and a yes means favorable. Very good.
Okay.
Madam Clerk?
I'm sorry, Ms. Eoff?
No.
Ms. Ford?
No.
Mr. Ilagan?
No.
Mr. Kanuha?
No.
Mr. Onishi? No. Ms. Poindexter?
No.
Ms. Wille?
No.
Mr. Yoshimoto?
No.
Chair Kern?
No.
Chair Kern, you have no ayes.
Thank you. So this will be, Bill 26 will be forwarded to Council with a negative recommendation. Thank you. Okay. May I have a motion, or excuse me, Madam Clerk, it's getting late. Would you read in communication?